Good day, Black Knight scholars. Mr. Deegan back at it with Unit 9, the Cold War, Modern India, and Modern Africa. We are studying today Lesson 2, which talks about wars in Korea, there it is, south of China, Vietnam, also south of China, and China itself. And the Truman Doctrine. Here's U.S. President Harry Truman. In 1947, the U.S. supports a policy of containment, which means to stop the spread of communism and to limit it to areas already controlled by the Soviet Union. America's policy of containment against communism led to the development of regional alliances against Soviet and Chinese aggression. America's alliances led to its involvement in wars in Korea and Vietnam. And here's a U.S. veteran holding a Korea-Vietnam veteran cap. Many soldiers fought in both conflicts for America. American leaders believed in the Domino Theory during the Cold War. What was this Domino Theory? Here's a visual of it. If one country in Asia became communist, let's say China, then the surrounding countries would follow in a domino effect. Then Korea, then Vietnam, then Laos, Cambodia, Thailand, Malay, Indonesia, Burma, and India. If one fell, they would all fall. That's the Domino Theory. First, let's start in China. A civil war started in China in 1927 between the forces loyal to the Nationalist Party against the forces loyal to the Communist Party. Who led the two sides in this Chinese civil war? Well, on the first side, you have the Nationalists, led by this man, Chiang Kai-shek. And on the other side, ding ding, you have the Communists, led by this man, Mao Zedong. Why did the two sides fight? After the Qing dynasty collapsed in 1911, there was a void in power in China, and the two parties formed to fill the voids. They both wanted to unify China in their own ways, and when the nationalists arrested and killed communist leaders in the 1927 Shanghai massacre, Mao Zedong led an uprising and civil war began in China. How did the Chinese Civil War end? Well, the communists win in 1947 and the nationalists set up their own nationalist China in Taiwan. You might call Taiwan the Hawaii of China. But in this case, they have their own government and their own economy. In mainland China, however, there is a communist nation that develops, and Mao Zedong rules as the dictator of mainland China until 1976. And he develops a cult, the cult of Mao. There's lots of propaganda. The people are supposedly all for him. Look at how happy everyone is in these propaganda posters. In reality, you had a lot of poverty in China when Mao was the dictator. The conflict between the two Chinas still exists today, mainland China against Taiwan. How? Mainland China is today a communist state called the People's Republic of China, and the island of Taiwan is a democratic state called Nationalist China. Deng Xiaoping, here he is, replaces Mao Zedong as the mainland Chinese leader in 1978. How does Deng want to lead China into the modern world? Well, Deng supports the Communist Party, but he wants to rid the country of Mao's influence. He wants a different way of ruling. How did Deng Xiaoping reform China's economy? Well, he transfers it from a command economy that is more communist to a free market economy that is capitalist, that the United States practices. Deng Xiaoping makes China's economy like America's. What were some of Deng's capitalist reforms? Well, he institutes private ownership of property. He says that farmers in China could sell goods on the free market and not give everything to the government. Deng Xiaoping allows entrepreneurs to start their own businesses, and he allows foreign countries to set up businesses in China. That is more capitalist than communist. After Deng reforms the Chinese economy, China sees rapid economic growth, proving that capitalism works. Here's 1949, the end of World War II, Mao Zedong's rule. Look at how stagnant the economy is. But here's 1978, when Mao Zedong gives up his power. Look at how much growth there is in the Chinese economy. Let's go to Korea for the Korean War, which was from 1950 to 1953. Here is Korea, north and south. It is south of China, and it is northwest of Japan here. Let's get some background on Korea. Japan ruled Korea from 1910 to 1945. In 1945, the Allied powers of World War II divided Korea into two zones at the 38th parallel. Here's North Korea in red. This dotted line is the 38th parallel, and in green to the south is South Korea. The Soviets occupied the north and made a communist government there, and US troops occupied the south and tried to make South Korea as democratic as possible. What were some of the major events of the Korean War? Well, North Korea invades South Korea in 1950, hoping to unify Korea under communism. On June 27, 1950, the United Nations holds an emergency meeting urging all of its member countries to help South Korea. And US President Harry Truman hears that call. And on June 30th, Truman decides to send US ground troops to Korea. Here's how he justifies it. He's signing his letter of ground troop approval. He says they know, as we do, that the aggression in Korea is part of the attempt of the Russian communist dictatorship to take over the world, step by step. Truman gives U.S. General Douglas MacArthur, remember him from World War II, permission to cross the 38th parallel line into North Korea. But he says to MacArthur, you must stop if you see any sign of Soviet or Chinese intervention. Truman doesn't want a larger war. He wants to prevent World War III. But on October 15, 1950, China sends its first wave of troops into North Korea, and MacArthur disobeys Truman's orders. MacArthur says, let's expand this war and let's roll back communism once and for all. Truman then fires his General MacArthur in April 1951, and the Korean War reaches a stalemate by summer 1951. Here is the headline of the San Francisco Examiner. Truman ousts MacArthur in quarrel over Korea. Let's face it, you can't overrule your president. How did the Korean War end? Well, the territory was divided near the 38th parallel. Here is the armistice line, the line that was signed in the treaty, and communist North Korea in red and democratic South Korea in yellow still exist to this day. Let's head to the Vietnam War, which was a much longer war. It started in 1957 and the Vietnam War ended in 1973. Where is Vietnam? It is south of China. It is southwest of Japan and southwest of Korea. Who owned Vietnam before the war? Vietnam had been a colony of France since the 1800s, along with its neighbors Laos and Cambodia to the west. So here is the strip of land known as Vietnam. And this entire gray region is called Indochina. How did France lose Vietnam anyway? Well, Vietnam began fighting for its independence from France during World War II, and the leader of this independence movement was this man, Ho Chi Minh. He was a communist. and Ho Chi Minh wants to rule an independent communist Vietnam. The French suffer a major defeat at the Battle of Dien Bien Phu in 1954. Here is Dien Bien Phu in northern Vietnam. And you see the Viet Minh troops planting their flag over the captured French headquarters. Then two Vietnams form. Vietnam is split into two by the US and the USSR at the 17th parallel. So here's the 17th parallel, North and South, communist and non-communist. So in North Vietnam, the communist government is under Ho Chi Minh, and Ho Chi Minh is supported by the Soviet Union, China, and the Viet Cong. In South Vietnam, you have a democratic government under Ngo Dien Diem, who is supported by the United States and all of the US's anti-communist allies. Civil war starts in Vietnam in 1955. Here we go. How does the US enter the Vietnam War anyway? Well, there's the Gulf of Tonkin incident in August of 1964. The Gulf of Tonkin is this body of water to the east of Vietnam. And you see two American warships. They are fired on by North Vietnamese ships. And this is a North Vietnamese P-4 destroyer ship who is engaging the USS Maddox in the Gulf of Tonkin. So, after this incident, US President Lyndon B. Johnson, here he is, urges US Congress to declare war, and Congress does so against North Vietnam on August 10th, 1964. Why? Why did America take a side in a civil war in a small Asian country so far from the American continent? The Domino Theory. It comes back to this. American leaders feared that communism would spread to all of Asia. Just as Truman does in the Korean War, Johnson does in the Vietnam War. The Domino Theory strikes again. What were the major events of the Vietnam War? You had the Tet Offensive. These were a series of surprise attacks by the Viet Cong and the northern Vietnamese troops on January 31st, 1968. Why were they surprises? Well, the Lunar New Year in Vietnam is this day. So it's basically like fighting during a holiday. It's important to point out that 1 out of 10 US soldiers was either injured or wounded during the war. 1 of 10. And that led to many anti-war protests within the United States. And here is one such protest: end the war now. How did the Vietnam War end? US President Richard Nixon, here he is, withdraws troops in 1973, and in 1976, North and South Vietnam unify as one communist government. The communists win in Vietnam, and to this day, Vietnam has a communist government. Here is its flag with the red and yellow of communism. That is it, ladies and gentlemen. We are done with 9.2. A preview of next lesson. It is the Cuban Missile Crisis. The Soviet leader Khrushchev allies with Fidel Castro to build a nuclear site within Cuba, and John F. Kennedy, the US president, has a predicament on his hands. How does he deal with that? That's for next lesson. This is Mr. Deegan, signing off.